Hello, and welcome to the Fresh Air Show. And it's come to this. I'm nervous, but I'm excited at the same time. Hello,
Ah,
and welcome to episode 1 of the Fresh Air Show. And the first question that I think a lot of you are probably going to be asking is, Fresh, aka Daniel, why are you doing a podcast? And it's simply because people with autism and other such uh, ailments have stories to tell, and I just wanted to share them with the world because there are plenty of people out there. My name is Daniel Anderson, but you properly know me as Fresh Powder from YouTube. I am a furry slash mild brony YouTuber, and if any of that offends you, well, life just isn't fair for you now, is it? Here I'll be joined by Rowan Sharp. That's a sophisticated name. Why don't you introduce yourself?
thank you. Hello, I'm Rowan. I'm the person that sits next to Fresh here in college.
Yep. And lastly, Dudley, a friend of mine from England. Introduce yourself.
Hello, Snake Staff Magic here.
Yes.
You may know me from some rivalries with Daniel, but when I'm not in character, yeah, we're friends.
Yes, pretty much. You're listening to the Fresh Air Show. This first question is from, and this is his current name right now, Little Reaper Studios. He might change it in the future, but he has basically asked us, what was our YouTube channel's original purpose? Who wants to start us off with that?
Well, my YouTube channel's more of a casual thing where I occasionally upload just funny things or just
You're more
general
of a
videos.
you're
I
more of
don't
a
update
commenter,
often, but-
I guess.
Huh?
You're more of a commenter.
That and a consumer of visual products.
Yeah.
By that, I'm a watcher.
I think this question is more directed at me. But the original purpose of my YouTube channel, it's all started back in 2012, and the original purpose of my YouTube channel was simple, but it was also very grandiose. It was basically my goal to videotape every single animal on Earth, and
Oh,
That's awesome.
and back then my name wasn't Fresh Powder. It was actually the original username that I came up with, and it was Your Local Safari Guide.
Hmm.
And
that's a channel I can get behind.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, like me, then Daniel, you used to watch a lot of animal documentaries and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's evidence of like the old videos of, I called them the suburban safaris, aka Your Local Safari Guide. There's evidence of those videos at the start of my channel, but because that's how I started out, that didn't really get me anywhere, so I've basically tried just experimenting with different formats on my channel ever since, and there's evidence of that on my channel as well. Because I've done like creepypastas and well, just one anyway. I've done vlogs, I've done animations in the past, just to see which format works, and apparently reacting to classic British television shows has done me pretty well so far.
I think I've seen your vlogs of your trip to Africa, which are pretty cool. So, and also with regards to your reactions to Doctor Who, there's surprisingly, like, I'd say there seem to be like a famous 15 who are reacting to Doctor Who at the moment, and surprisingly there aren't a lot of people reacting to it from what I've seen. So that's how I stumbled across your channel. So
yeah, because Doctor Who's kind of unique, because in terms of how much of people talk about it on YouTube, and when it came to what I was going to react to, at first I was really picky, and I basically just looked around and figured, what is there not a lot of? And, well, Doctor Who's out there. I don't see a lot of people doing this. The full episode, anyway, but that's just separated out into 4 pieces for copyright reasons.
And I'm glad you delved into Doctor Who.
Yeah. But it's also kind of a drag because people recognize me more for my reactions than, for instance, Fresh versus Snake Staff, which is me and Dudley's projects where our 2 channels and characters clash.
I'd say maybe add little snippets on the end of your reactions, like sort of advertising your other videos, maybe. Which I should probably be taking my own advice in that regard, because it seems my channel started off as my first few videos were a couple of Lego stop motion videos.
Yeah.
Because I watched a lot of those in school, and I thought I've got to do a couple of my own.
Yeah, because no matter what kind of person you are, you've bound to have played with Lego at some point in your life, and it's bound to come in handy someday, whether it's making videos or just making like little helpful crafts around the house, etc.
Yeah. When I started my YouTube channel, I'd always wanted to do a Let's Play, but obviously copyright and stuff kind of scared me a little bit, because you hear it all the time about, copyright notices and stuff like that. And but I finally got an Earthbound Let's Play out, which I'm really happy about. But not a lot of people have seen it, so I mean, hopefully it'll get more views in the future. But I only realised the other day, I've been on YouTube so long, I thought I'd only been on it for about 3 years, and it turns out I've been on it since 2013 or something. So I was like, oh God, I didn't even realise.
Time goes by.
Yeah.
So I guess that answers your question, Little Reaper Studios, or whatever the heck your name is now, by the time of this recording. You're listening to The Fresh Air Show. Dudley, you mentioned my trip to Africa. My family's quite a fan of African sort of culture, I guess, and we've actually been there 3 times now. They've had their ups and downs, but by far the major down of going to Africa was probably the shark dive. Now, at the time, I was excited to try this out, because it's like a bucket list thing. Like, if at least do it like once in your life, so you can say, I've done it. And yeah, the first major complaint that I have is that we needed to get up really, really early, and in Africa the sun hadn't even risen yet, so I was like, oh God, this early, seriously? And so we drove along the motorway, and eventually we made it to the sea, and it's like this sort of wooden building where it's like the gift shop, and it gives you like instructional tips, like what to do and what not to do. Now, this is where things start to go a bit sour, because when you think of multiple people going into a shark tank, you like to think that they get changed in the wetsuits, like at the building, but no. Instead, they straight up just plonk you onto the boat and they start speeding out. Now, when I imagine a boat trip, I imagine just a simple sail across the sea, and people are offering you drinks and confectionery. What I don't like is, because it was a rather small boat, it was like the size of an average yacht, but it could fit like 50 or so people on it, and it was literally bouncing across the waves, just like doo, 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 and it was like, oh God, stop. And it was horrible, and like I mentioned earlier, we hadn't had our wetsuits put on, and so we were just getting pummeled by waves of salt water, and I was like, oh God, get it over with.
I see what you mean now.
Yeah, and eventually we got out into the middle of the water because that's where we were told where the sharks were going to be, and these were like great whites. These were the real deal. And now again, I like the privacy of a bathroom because everyone does, but now it comes to the part where you're getting into your wetsuit, and it's just torture because I was like on like the top on like the roof of the boat where the waves were hitting us hard, and um and so we were sitting on like these sort of benches where you flip the lid up, there's your wetsuit, and you had to get changed in front of everyone. And it was equally as hard because we'd be soaking wet, and everyone knows that it's really hard to get your clothes off when you're soaking wet. It's just it was grim. But that's not the worst of it, because at this point I was just like, oh god, what could possibly go wrong now? And so we eventually got changed into the wetsuits, and the thing is, it wasn't like oxygen tanks where you just went down there and you literally had to like take a deep breath and hold it. And so my dad went down there in the cage before me and my brother, and this was the final nail in the coffin because you have to take a deep breath. You don't know when the cage is going to go down, and so my dad on his run, he was too late to take his breath, and he just took in like a mouthful of chum, and it was literally like and at that point I was just like, oh god, no more, just get me back to sea, just get me back to land.
I regret all my life choices.
That was the low point of the day, and that's actually why there's hardly any footage of the shark dive on that day. So I was just so annoyed and frustrated that I was just, oh, what's the point? Just get me back to the hotel. I've got sunburn. Oh, just get it over with. So yeah.
Other people who've been shark diving should probably tell us, but it sounds a bit unprofessional. I'm sure they would have at least put the chum away from the cage, or I'm assuming they provided goggles so you could see underwater better.
I think so, but again, I didn't go down there, so I can't remember now. So yeah, that was a low point of the holiday.
Everything just went wrong.
You're listening to The Fresh Air Show. Alright, since it's January, I want to at least talk about Christmas before January's over, so how has Christmas been for you guys?
It was pretty good, yeah.
Your birthday's at New Year, so that's a double celebration.
Yeah, and New Year's Eve, but same diff, I suppose.
So do you have 2 birthdays, Rowan? Or as in, you celebrate, if your birthday's on New Year's, you have 2 days celebration, so one for your birthday and one for New Year's? Or?
Sometimes my birthday is sort of overshadowed by the fact that it's the new year, but so it goes. But yeah, I do get quite a lot of presents for Christmas and my birthday combined. So it's a plus.
I used to have a friend in school, and his birthday is on Christmas Day. So so it always made you wonder if he got double presents or if he got the same amount of presents.
On Christmas Day, that seems almost unfair. Like, if your birthday's like in the middle of summer, that's a brilliant time for a birthday. Mine's in September, and which is fine. But jeez, on Christmas Day, that you must feel so envious of other people's birthdays.
Because it's special.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if my birthday was on a Christmas Day, I'd like to think you got double presents, so it'd be more exciting. I don't know if you have to wait a whole year before you get presents. But then I believe in some cultural countries, if it's your birthday and they do it the other way around, so you have to buy presents for everybody else instead of.
I think that happens in some country. Like, I'm not sure what country this is, but apparently, like, the eldest daughter of the family wears a wreath that has candles on it, and she goes from bedroom to bedroom giving the gifts to the family. Traditions like that are pretty weird because it makes you wonder, was she forced to be in that situation? Like, I remember one New Year's, I remember, apparently this is an Anderson tradition, Daniel Anderson tradition. Now, apparently it's to do with the eldest born needs to walk up to your own front door with a bottle of wine and a plastic case of mince pies or whatever. And I was like, whoa, wait, don't kick me out of the house. Why have I got this bottle in the... And I'm like, explain this thing to me before you put me in this situation. I'd like to have my opinion whether or not this is fitting for me.
I'm assuming by the mince pies, this is meant to be a Christmas tradition.
Well, it was shortly after Christmas. I'm not sure if it was mince pies. It was probably something else, but that's what comes to mind first. Is that a guest I can hear?
That's my brother and his girlfriend just come home, so ignore that.
Okay. Were there any presents that stood out to you guys in a good or a bad way? Because that might be interesting to hear.
I got a new game called Air, for anyone who might know it.
Well, I mean,
I'm doing a podcast!
I'm not sure that'll be fair on anybody's ears listening.
Sorry.
It's alright. What I mean is, in your lifetime, what presents have stood out to you in a good or a bad way?
Oh, and...
Just trying to remember.
Well, I can... Oh, you got one, Rowan?
Probably my first ever Nintendo DS. I was maybe 7 or 8 at the time.
Right.
It was my first personal console, and I was over the moon with it because this is the first thing that's actually mine, because every other game console belonged to my brother, and all I could really do was watch him play.
You had to share.
Which, well, not so much share. I actually enjoyed watching him because he was good at games. But this was the first game console that was actually mine.
Right.
Which is always a good feeling.
Yeah. My precious.
I think one springs to mind of when I was in primary school, I first got my PlayStation 2 because we'd go to a club and they'd have Jack and Daxter. So I was like, I really want to play
that's...
Are we allowed to say professional names here? Because I don't know. I'm sure the other professional podcasts change the names. I don't know. Instead of Jack and Daxter, it'd be Jock and Dexter.
Nah, I think idle talk's okay. They can't get you in trouble unless you're promoting something like, your favorite drink is so and so or something. But I mean, I'm sure it's fine.
Right. Well, were there any presents that stood out in your memories in a bad way?
I don't think so. My parents were pretty careful with their present giving. It's always something that you could enjoy no matter what. So.
Well, you're listening to the Fresh Air Show. Well, one present that stands out in my mind in a bad way. I can tell you that I think I nearly killed myself with it.
Oh?
Okay.
Do tell.
It was long, long ago. It was 2001. It was Christmas morning. And the reason I remember this present so much is because when I look back at old VHS tapes, I can see that present there, like, oh, there it is. And so we came downstairs as always, and there were several, there were quite a few big presents there, but one that stood out to me was like this tall, freestanding, rectangular present, and I'm like, ooh, what on earth is this? Now, I don't remember opening this present, but I do remember what was inside it. It was like a cylindrical sensory tank. Now, this was long before my parents knew I had Asperger's syndrome, so at the time I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And for those of you who want a visual representation of what it is, basically, like I say, it's a cylindrical glass structure which you stick onto like a base, and you fill it up with water, and when you turn it on, it starts producing bubbles, and the color changes, and there were like free plastic fish that swam in it. I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. And
those things.
Yeah. And so days later, I think, my parents had eventually moved it into me and my brother's bedroom, and I'm like, oh, that tank's up here now. And for some reason, they decided to place it at the foot of my bed. And I'm like, well, that's an okay place to put it, but surely it's going to get in the way when me and my brother are going to start playing. And to be gentle, and you can see where this is going. And so I got on like all fours and like tried to gently nudge like the base into like the nearest corner. And you can still hear me, Dudley?
Yeah.
All right. So I tried to like gently nudge the base into the nearest corner so it wasn't in the way of things. And after going a few millimeters, I just thought, okay, this isn't going to work. And so I straight up tried pushing it. And disaster struck. I pushed it, the tank wobbled, and it shattered into pieces.
Oh
god. Oh my.
Yeah, there was like a little typhoon of water that flooded the bedroom. Me and my brother like dove onto our beds to like protect ourselves. And the only thing I remember after that was my parents running up and being in the doorway, and let's just say they weren't impressed. It could have been worse. It could have been a whole lot worse. It could have crashed down on top of me, and I could have been lacerated by the glass.
Yeah.
Now, my advice to parents who are listening to this, if you're going to get your child a sensory tank, the least you can do is install it into the wall or something where install it in a good place where you know it's not going to be in the way and nothing like that should ever happen. And
was that gift you were particularly fond of, or was it like, well, that's gone now?
Well, I was sort of scared of the outcome when like the tank shattered, and I'm like, okay, at least I survived. It kind of scared me away from get asking my parents for another one, because as you can imagine, they didn't want another one after that disaster.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I'm slowly learning that anything that happens to you that involves fish causes disaster.
That's true.
Well, I've had goldfish in the past. I don't know what that says about me. So, any other stories you want to bring up regarding the holidays?
Well, other than this memory suddenly springing up of my dad getting me a unicycle for Christmas once, not really.
A unicycle?
Yeah, I know. He wrapped it up so it just looked like this thing with that started off white, then
did he hide it behind a did he like hide it behind a wall as if to say like, oh hey, we got you a bike, and then you like grabbed it and like, where's the rest of it?
No, he just wrapped it up so it was white at the top, tapered off, and went wider again. And I was like, what on earth could that possibly be? And then I unwrap it, and it's just a unicycle. I'm like, Dad, why?
How much?
It's a bicycle.
Pardon?
How much do you use your unicycle?
I used it occasionally, just on rainy afternoons when I didn't feel like playing games or anything. I just looked to the corner of the room. There it is, and I'm like, you know what? Why not? I don't know where it is now. I think my dad might have thrown it away, but there's that.
Speaking of old toys being thrown away, does anyone remember what happens to their old McDonald's toys?
They got thrown out eventually.
Like, why would you throw these somewhat perfectly good toys away? Like, I enjoyed a lot of these. Like, I was gutted when I couldn't find like my Kung Fu Panda set again, and like, why would you give them away? You need our consent if you're gonna throw something away.
I do have a bucket of toys in my attic because when I was younger, my old room was like packed with stuff. So one day when I was at school, opportune time, my parents threw out like half of my toys just to like clear up a bit. You know?
Oh God.
So which was a little traumatizing, you have to admit. But like I had some I still have some like cherished ones left over. Like when you think, I mean, I don't have a lot of my McDonald's toys, but I can think of a lot of ones I had and have. For instance, I had the it's really brief, but you know the snake in Tarzan that attacks him and he like makes it go around the trees and the car him. There used to be a little cuddly toy version of that, which I still have. And I had like the Carnotaurs from Dinosaur and things like that. I don't have a lot of my McDonald's toys, but I do have a few different things here and
there. All right. What else? What was the weirdest toy you've ever got besides that unicycle?
Nothing really springs to mind. It probably because I may have had weird gifts in the past, but nothing topped the unicycle. Because why would you get that for a child? Bicycle, I get that. Unicycle, why? You're not racing a clown.
I'll tell you what, I was trying to think of a weird toy example, and I actually remembered a traumatizing Christmas present.
Oh, God.
Do tell.
Wow. It's literally the only time I ever got into a tantrum over a Christmas present. So, at first I thought it was awesome. They got me a Hot Wheels set, and it was the one where there was a great white shark at the bottom.
I had that.
Yeah, like if the car goes under the plank that's holding up the shark, then the shark will eat the car, essentially.
Tasty.
But there was only one little snag with this present.
Yeah.
I didn't get any cars with it. So all I could do was look at it.
Wow.
I got so angry and so upset.
Was this like your first set?
It was the only Hot Wheels set I ever had. Actually.
Oh, God.
Oh, wow.
I wasn't that big on cars, so, I mean, yeah. But they sent it back because it never came with the Hot Wheels, which was fair enough. I wasn't upset they sent it back or anything.
You can get like Hot Wheels cars in like any decent pound shop or dollar store.
Oh yeah, easily. But it was Christmas Day, and I had the thing there looking at me that I had no cars. I couldn't go and get any cars.
That's just salt in the wound.
Yeah. But yeah, so glad that I have those memories back now. Cheers, Daniel. That's great.
I'm sorry. It's all for entertainment purposes.
I'm only joking.
Yeah. Another weird toy that I remember having was I don't know if it's that weird, but it was basically like this large sort of rubbish van, and it had like a working like bin tipper system, and so I was like, and oftentimes I because kids like to imagine that a lot of their toys are real, I liked assuming that when I put the rubbish into the van, I assumed that it would disappear. And it just got crammed full of like old papers and wrappers, and it was pretty stupid. But as a child, I just thought, this should be going away within a week now. Why is it not going anywhere?
Child naivety.
Yeah. You're listening to The Fresh Air Show. So, Rowan's question, how did me and Dudley meet? Actually, Dudley, why don't you tell this story?
Oh?
Yeah, well, okay, so it all started many years ago where I was watching, I started watching Daniel's reactions to Doctor Who, and I think I must have started watching around the time he was seeing, the third episode in the series, and I thought, actually no, maybe it was the finale to that series, I'm not sure, but I thought, because I was looking up reactions, so I was just up one night looking around, and I thought, it was really funny, I'm going to watch these reactions, and one day, well, Daniel got to a certain episode called, and the title of the episode is called Daleks in Manhattan, and I thought it would be really cool to see his reaction if he didn't see, spoilers, the Daleks emerge from the lift. So I sent him a message asking if he'd avoid looking at the title somehow to see if he could, and he didn't. And I thought, okay, fair enough. And then I thought, I could have a little fun with this. So I was driving to town and I was thinking up this funny video idea, and I thought, you know what? I'd love to do that. If he's up for it, then hopefully he'll like it. So I sent him a tribute video of sorts. So with the Daleks threatening his OC, and
yeah, because they lifted up like this barrier, and you had like my MLP Sona of fresh powder just in a cage in tears.
Your reactions were priceless, but you did look a little I don't know, nervous as well. So I thought, oh god. So after I sent it to him, I sent him like 20,000 apologies while saying I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you haven't seen how this series is turning out, I recommend going to one of our playlists. It's called Snake Staff, Fresh versus Snake Staff.
Yeah, there's like a playlist that depicts the entire story of our friendship / rivalry. Because we're frenemies, we like disliking one another. Yes, we're frenemies. He's like my least favorite brother. You and I, we're not enemies or friends. We're just frenemies to the end.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
But I'd like to think, even though the series is still going, that we've become somewhat pen pals. Would you agree?
Yeah. Because I wanted, because of the 2 videos that Dudley made, I wanted to pay him back in a way, because he actually suggested this idea because in any episode of Doctor Who that has like the Cybermen in it, afterwards, the intro to that reaction has me doing like a Cyberman voice, and then it's just me coughing like what the heck was that? And if you've seen my videos, I do a pretty good Cyberman impression with the help of iMovie to filter things out. And so Dudley basically figured, because I do a good Dalek voice and I'm in command of several Daleks, and because you're good at a Cybermen voice, you could make like an army of Cybermen, and we could clash together, and it could be really hilarious and creative, and that's how Fresh vs. Snakestaff, the series, was born.
Yeah, I also heard you told me you're into your animation and stuff, and I thought, well, if you're up for it, we could work on a little project together. And it seems to be getting a fair following, I'd like to say. It's racking in the views. So, and it's also showing people what you can do animation-wise and stuff, and me also, I suppose. So, yeah, the next video. I mean, I know we're not here to talk about that, but the next one's going to be a nice culmination.
It's a secret.
Yeah. Yes, I won't say anything else.
Very discreet.
Yeah.
What about you two? How did you meet?
We actually met when work started in August this year. I think Rowan. You see, I've been working at college for like 2 years already, and I've basically sat in the exact same spot. I've been in since I started there, and you just happened to sit next to me, and
I sat next to you, and we sort of looked at each other at the start, and we're like, "Hey, what's up?" And then we started going out about our own business. For a while, we just sort of acknowledged each other's existence, but didn't really talk.
Baby
but
steps.
Then you started, you started working on that retro project, the one with the...
Yeah. I was doing a little project for friends of mine in DeviantArt where I was basically drawing several of their characters in a 1930s rubber hose animation style.
Should show a couple of those on screen when this is all done.
Yeah, I'll probably do that, yeah, just to show people what we're talking about.
Yeah, but what I was actually talking about was that ancient Egyptian one with the selfie stick.
Yeah,
That's when I started paying attention to you more, because I just found that so funny, because you were just tracing over pictures of various animals with these smiles on their faces. And
for those of you who...
That's actually pretty good.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, I was tasked with advertising a modern-day product in a retro style, and I see pictures of, like, Egyptians holding, like, staffs, and I thought, what could they be holding? And my mentor actually suggested the selfie stick. And so basically the idea of Egyptian gods holding up a selfie stick came up, and the basis was already there for the most part, because people take you can see pictures of animals with selfies, how like they're really close up to the screen, or birds that have been seen in the security cameras, I basically just took their faces and just stuck them on human bodies, and there you have the picture. It'll be on the screen for those of you who are curious.
But we are actually started talking properly was after I started printing some things out earlier.
Because you did sort of stained glass
Steven Universe styles murals for like OC version of diamonds, and you were just standing around and you happened to see one of them and you're like, oh hey, that's pretty cool, Steven Universe. And I was like, this person knows Steven Universe. I could connect with this. Because I'm actually a very unsociable person, so I don't talk to people much, but I find out he likes something I like, and I'm like, I could work with this.
Yeah.
So I gave him one of mine, I think. I think I gave you the brown diamond one, or was it a different one?
I think I just admired your work,
yeah.
and I sort of came up with the idea of an art trade between us, and
oh yeah, now I remember.
Yeah.
I didn't give you one. I was giving them to other people, but they were like, "Oh hey, do you think we could do an art trade? I could do you a persona, and you can do my JMOC in your style."
Yeah, and
that's how the friendship was born.
Yeah. The persona, for those of you who are curious, is actually the one in the background of this recording. Once the final video is put together.
I have yes. Oh, sorry.
Go on, Dudley.
Yeah, I think one day I might draw myself like as an OC or something. I don't know. I haven't got that to that point yet, but it could be interesting.
Right. Well, guys, we're approaching the 40-minute mark. I think that's a good enough time to start calling it quits. For those of you in the comments, be sure to leave questions for us. I'm sure that we can answer your questions, if you have any at all.
We need material.
Yeah, we need material. If you want to see us alive again, send us questions.
So, I think it would be good for the three of us to pick a video we've seen on YouTube to recommend to people at the end of this, or not one of your own videos though. So for everyone to check out and maybe say what they thought of it, perhaps.
Right. Now, for those of you who want an idea of how often these podcasts are going to go out, we've agreed that at least once a month. Like, we'll record these at least one Tuesday a month and see how that goes well. All right. Well, gonna take a break now. Gonna relax my voice. You guys want to say goodbye?
Thanks for listening. We appreciate it.
Dudley.
This is the longest I've ever.
Thank you very much, everybody.
All right. So see ya. Goodbye.
Bye.
See ya.
And cut.